So we are focusing something on adverb of frequency, right? Adverb of frequency is something that you have been using it quite some time. But what exactly adverb of frequency, right? So I have already informed you there is something called adverb of time that in our previous topic we have discussed something called adverb of time, where we have informed you like today, day after tomorrow, tomorrow, yesterday. These are called adverb of times, right? So before I can tell more about this adverb of frequency, so let me tell you, let me write you few sentences here. Let me write few sentences here. So what is the sentence like? No, that will give a lot of explanation uh, between like what is adverb of frequency. Adverb of frequency is commonly used. Like what do you mean by an adverb? A adverb is something that modifies a verb, right? That modifies a verb. So whenever I say adverb of frequency, that means how frequently, how often you do a particular work, right? So whenever I say adverb of frequency, it tells more about how often, how often you do a particular work. So before that, I can tell more about adverb frequency. Let me put few sentences before. Okay. The first sentence I'm going to write for you. I can say that I usually go to school. This is my first sentence. I usually go to school. The second things I'm going to write, like no, I can say I generally go to school. This is my second sentence. And the third sentence I want to write, I often go to school. These are the three sentences I have written before, right? So whenever I say I usually go to school, I generally go to school, I often go to school. So what do you mean by that? You can just put a different words like this. Okay, every day. Put a sentence like every day. So the sentence will become I usually go to school every day. Or I usually go to school every day. Or don't put it every day. The sentence will be fine without it. Okay. I usually go to school. I generally go to school. I often go to school. I have put three different sentences before you. So if you just look at the sentence very carefully, what you can find here, I have put a word term usually. This is something called generally, and this is something called often. Whether the three sentences I have put before you are the same, I mean, they provide the same meanings to you, or they are different. Look, there's no difference except the words, usually, generally, often. But look, I said go to school, go to school, go to school. Only thing that usually, generally, often. So do you think they are same or they essentially, give you a different meaning altogether? Can you use the same sentence in every situation? Whatever the situation this particular sentence present, the first sentence, whether the second sentence provide the same or the third didn't provide. I would like to. Can anybody can tell? Deepak sir, Sanjay sir, Rashmi sir, everybody, whoever there.
Sir, what the question, sir?
Are they same? Usually, generally, often they are the same or they provide you some different meaning. Suppose if you say, I usually go to school, I normally go to school, I often go to school, are they same or they are different as far as the meaning is concerned?
Sir, I think it is the same meaning, sir.
Okay. Or Rasmi sir, it is the same meaning, or you can say it different something.
Uh, it is about to same meaning, but I don't know exact difference actually. There should be some difference in between.
Okay. Fine. Let me tell you. Usually, generally, and often, these are the words that we use in most of the time. These are the words that we use most of the time. But remember, they are not essentially the same. They are not essentially the same, right? So what are the difference? Let me tell you, friends. Like usually, generally, and often, they are called the adverb of frequency. They tell more about how frequently, how often you undertake a work. Okay. So before I can explain more about this usually, generally, often, let me give you the complete list of adverb of frequency that you normally use in your day-to-day life. Okay. So let me put you some. So this is I put a line before you. Okay. And I call it. I put a line before you and I call it. This is called adverb of frequency. Adverb of frequency. The first one, what you use always. They put it always. Here, the frequency is 100%. You can say the frequency is 100%. Right? The second one, I want to put it. See the first one. And the second one, something called usually. Right? I have written it here. That is something called usually. Right? So what I can say that usually that gives you 9% of frequency. I'll explain everything. Don't worry. Just check out the things I'm going to write here or I'm writing. Let me give you the third one. And the third one is something that we can say generally or normally. Generally or normal. I can say it is 80% of frequency. The fourth one, we call it, okay, we call it often or frequently. Often or frequently. We call it often or frequently. What I can say, often or frequently, give you 7% of frequency. The next one I'm going to put before you. That is called 5. Right? So I can say like sometimes that gives me let it be 50% chance. That gives me only 50% chance. That means frequency, not chance, it is called frequency. How frequently you do some work. The next one I want to write for you is something called, occasional, right? Occasional. That gives me 30% frequency. And we take another word called sender. That gives me only 10% frequency. And we say something called rarely. that gives me a 5% chance, and something called never. That means I never did it doing. That means it's 0%. So this is how, this is the chart you have been using in your day-to-day conversation. So never, I think never is not visible to you. Okay. Rarely is 5%, and something called never. I can put it never here. Okay. The 9 one is called never, and this give you the 0%. Right. So these are the things I use every time whenever I use. Okay. So right now, check it out. I usually go to school. Usually means 90%. I generally means 80%. I often, like 70%. So essentially, the three sentences are not equal as far as meaning is concerned. That's very
Sir,
important.
sir, when we make the sentence, how can measure the percentage, sir?
I'll let you know. I'm just going for the discussion, then I'll let you know. That depends upon the person to person. How frequently you do. This is how often you do. So that you know how often you do something. So accordingly you can use. This is for your understanding, sir. This is not, there's nothing called any hard and fast rule, right? But here, suppose you do something every day, almost without fail, then you say 100%. If you are missing out one day, you do every day but missing out one day, you can say it is something called usually I do that. If you are missing out 1 or 2 days, you can say 80%, that means generally or normally. I'll let you know, sir. So first try to understand like how they have been stacked up. The first, it is called adverb of frequency. What are the words that you use every day in your life? The first sentence here is always, usually, generally, normally, often, or frequently, sometimes, occasionally, seldom, rarely, and never. So if I'm going for it, I can say funnel. Okay. So let me go for a funnel. The funnel is like, my funnel is like this. My funnel is like this. So suppose this is my funnel. Okay. This is a funnel structure where this particular things represents always. And this is something called never. So in between, these things will be there. Suppose you take out this funnel and you are putting water, and this is the maximum area of this particular things. That means water will flow vigorously. It will go as it is, right? Because this is something of always, always. That means look at the space, look at the area. But whenever this is completely, there will be no hole there. It is completely closed. So you can say never happened something. So like that, we have taken a lot of structures here. What are the item frequency? How often, how frequently you do a work? How frequently you do a work? So that is called adverb of frequency. How often or how frequently you undertake? You say, sir, I always go there. That means if you take a statistic of 30 days, you take 30 days off for your office. So only 24, I mean, excluding Sunday or Saturday, it is 20 days after. If you are going 20 days, you can say, I always go to office. That depends upon it. If you take, like, your office is 20 days in a month, right? So take a statistic, whatever Deepak sir asked you, let me explain it. Okay. Suppose this month is 30. days. Okay. Suppose your office, excluding Sunday or some Saturday, Sunday like that, you can say 20 days. 20 days. Okay. Your office open for 20 days, whereas 30 days. If your means always means frequency is 20%, I mean 100%. That you can say if you are going every day without fail, you can say 20. Out of 20, 20 days you are going. Then you can say I always go to my office. So out of 20 days, suppose you take an casual leave, you don't go. Normally you don't go, and you know that every month you are getting some casual leave, sick leave, something like that. So you can say that today I can take a sick leave and I do my personal work, or I'll take a casual leave, I'll do my personal work. So that time you can say I usually go to office. Generally, if you take 2 days, so based on the thing, look, these are the things that you can express the situation as per the situation, right? So it depends upon the suppose you are taking a 7 days time, or you are taking in a month, or you're taking in a year. So year time 365 days. If you do every day, then you can say I always go there. I always hit gyms. But sometimes you don't go also to the gym because you have some other work. Then I usually go to gym. If you are going only for 50%, you go to office only 10 days. You can say I sometimes go to office, like occasionally 30%. So that depends the kind of work you undertake. Suppose it is an office work, so you cannot. I occasionally go to office. You will not get anything out of it. This is your bread and butter. So you can say either I always go to office or I usually go to office, because that's the situation. You can take 1 or 2 leaves. You cannot take 50%, right? You can say this month I I generally go to office. That means you are taking some day. In a month, like you are completely under stress, or something happens to you. You are down with fever. Suppose you say 70% a day you could not attend the office. Then you can say I occasionally go to office this month, like that. So depends. It depends upon the situation, because I have already informed you. Our situation is like that. Every day we create a situation and try to speed it up, because normally, usually, generally, often, look, from 6 occasionally, starting from this one, 6 to this one up to 2. These are very highly confusing. Sometimes, usually, generally, normally, frequently, sometimes, like that, occasionally, like these are very, you can say these are very highly confusing words. And they appears like, you all guys told me, sir, they are essentially same. I usually go to school, I generally go to school, I often go to school. You feel that usually equal to generally equal to often. But let me tell you, they are default in their frequency. That means how frequently or how often you do a work. Suppose take a 7 days time. You can say I always go to temple. That means every day out of 7 days. You are going for I mean going you have gone to the temple, you can say that I always go to temple. You take that 7 days, and suppose you missed out Wednesday. Then you can say I usually go to temple. So remember, always, usually, generally, often, sometimes, occasionally, seldom, and rarely, never. These are the things that normally you use for your routine one, right? So where you are using it, it is used for routine one, or you can say habit, custom, and form. Most frequently, you are using this adverb of frequency in your day-to-day life habit. You can say, I always wake up at 6 o'clock. Every day you are waking up at 6 o'clock means you can say, I always wake up. But some other way, you are missing out that routine. You can say, I usually wake up. If you never wake up, then you can say sometimes 50%. In a month, you take 15 days, you wake up at 5:30 and the rest is sometimes at 10 o'clock, sometimes 8 o'clock. You can say, I sometimes work off at, that means the chances is 50% in that particular time period. If you say occasionally, that only 30%, maybe 8 to 10 days wake up. It seldom means 10%, 1 or 2 days, like that. So it depends. So basically, these are the adverb of frequency, and this adverb of frequency used in a habit, custom, and hobby. You can use it because you can say, I occasionally, celebrate Holi. That means if you take 10 years time, so out of which you have celebrated 1 or 2 days, 2 occasions. You can say occasional. Okay. So every occasion, if you are celebrating that thing, you can say, I always celebrate Holi. I usually celebrate Holi. That means, you take a 5 months, 5 years time. In the 5 years time, you missed out one occasion, but normally the 4 occasions you celebrate. Then you can say, I usually celebrate Holi. That means, bearing 1 or 2 occasions, you celebrate. So depends upon the situation. I cannot say like, what is the exact timing. The kind of look Holi is a yearly affair. It never happens every day or every month. Yearly affair. So you take 10 or 15 Holis of your life, right? Then decide based on that. Suppose working of daily. That is a daily affair that happens every day. So you take a 7 days time or 1 month time. Then you can decide how frequently you are doing. Suppose you are hitting gym every day. Whether it is happening every day, if it's happening every day without fail, you can say always. If it is happening sometimes, 50% time frequently you don't go. Sometimes 3 days you go in a week. Then you can say sometimes I go hit the gym or sometimes I go to gym for a workout. So it depends. That depends upon the situation. And this is important. Whenever I say this is something called always and this is something called never. Never means the frequency is absolutely zero. You never do something, right? I can say I never tell lies. That means I always tell lies. That frequently I tell lies. The frequency is 100%. Where the frequency is nil. Like that. So this is all about our adverb of frequency. And believe me, adverb of frequency is basically used in habit, custom, and hobby as far as your spoken English is concerned. Your spoken English is concerned. In spoken English, basically, you can use like this, right? Because in spoken English, you don't refer a lot of things past. Whenever something happened in the past, you use used to. Used to is something that you can use, to represent different situation in the past. But here, whatever happens currently, whatever you are going to undertake, or that is completely happening in your life, day-to-day basis, you are using like always, usually, generally, normally, often, frequently, sometimes, occasionally, seldom, rarely. These are the words that you use very frequently, right? These are the words you use very frequently, and I can say that they are not essentially same. Look at the sentence. I usually go to school. Here, that means you take 7 days time. In that 7 days time, if you missed out one day, you can say that I usually go to school. If you at least missed out 1.5 days or 2 days, you can say I generally go to school. If you take out 3 or 4 days, you can say I often go to school. So often, generally, and usually, they are not essentially same. Whenever you are trying to create a situation, whenever you are trying to create a situation, look at the frequency. That's why it is called adverb of frequency. That means how frequently you do a work, how frequently, how often you do a work. So this is all about my habit tester and hobby. This is the concept and this is the frequency level and how you can use in different situations. So you have any doubt, you can ask, ask me. If it is clear, you can put a thumbs up. Any doubt? Deepak sir, it's clear right now or
No, yes, sir. Clear right now. Sir, one example is I always get up 5 o'clock in the morning.
that means it always means take a month time. If 30 days, out of 30 days, You work off all the days. That means without fail. You can say always 100% frequency. That means, frequency means how frequently you do the work. How frequently you do the work. So this is a
Okay,
frequency.
sir.
This is
Sir,
frequency. Okay.
sir,
Yeah.
sir, I never take non-veg.
That means this is something called frequency zero. That means never happens. नहीं हो सकता like that. Never. I never talk to that means frequency. I always talk to that very frequently. I talk. So whenever you say that, how often, how frequently you do that, these are the words you use everyday basis. Look, these are you are using. It's not a new concept, but you are not using properly. Some other way you are missing out something. That's why
Yes,
I
sir.
put
Yes, sir.
it there. Okay.
It is, sir, very, sir, interesting, sir. It is very
So,
interesting, sir.
so I meant to say that whenever I say I normally say okay, usually equal to normal, normally equal to often, often equal to frequent. Like that, people say frequently means okay, usually. Frequently means a lot of people say always. No, I frequently go there. I frequently go means only 70% chance, my dear friends. It's not sometimes called always. But look at 90% people will tell, okay, frequently means always, or usually means generally. No, we are not essentially same. And that's our problem. Their problem
Sir,
yes.
sir, I celebrate my birthday occasionally.
Yes, that means occasionally means you take, it's a yearly affair. If it's yearly affair, suppose you take, 10 of your birthdays. 10 of your birthdays. So out of 10 of your birthdays, if you celebrate in 3 occasion or 4 occasion, okay, you can say occasion and celebrate. Like that. Whenever I'll
Sir,
ask you,
right, sir,
okay.
right.
So if I'll ask you, Deepak sir, do you celebrate your birthday? Occasionally. That means if you take, I remember last 10 years, if I go back to my last 10 years of celebration, maybe 3 to 4 times I celebrate. So that I call it occasional. If you 5 times you have done it, 5 times out of 10 years, you have done it 5 times or 5 years, you can say sometimes I celebrate. Sometimes I celebrate. That means it denotes the chance is 50%. Okay. So I frequently, that means it will go up. Okay. So like so why I given you, because I have find, like you can say, sir, I always attend your class. That means suppose I have conducted 5 days in a week. If you attend 5 days, then you can say always. Suppose you missed out 1 day's live class, you can say, sir, I use that. If you take out 4.5 days, something like that, I normally, I often, I sometimes, I occasionally, I seldom, I rarely, and I will.
Sir, I take water frequently.
Yes, that means frequently means check it out. This is something called frequently means 70% of the time. So you know how the frequency happens. Suppose one day you take you are supposed to take 5 times, but today you take 3 times or 2 times. You can say frequently. So it depends upon the situation. Whether what is the situation you are dealing, right? So if you are an office goer, you can say I usually go to my office. You can say that is the right word, because nobody always go to office. Some other way we are taking leave on different occasions or different way, or you want to, if you are not being in castle, you are always taking some leave. Then you can say I usually go to office. I usually get things like that. So it depends, like how we can use it. That depends upon the situation and the kind of work that we are undertaking, right? So it is a birthday. That you can say I always celebrate my birthday. If you take 10 years of time, if you celebrate all the 10 years, I mean each year you celebrate, you can say that I always celebrate my birthday. So it depends upon the situation, right? It depends upon the situation. And this is called my adverb of frequency. How frequently or how often you undertake the work, and how frequently you do that particular thing. So this is something called adverb of frequency. This week I have focused more on enabling your error. A lot of error you have in your written communication or verbal communication, spoken communication. So it is very important and imperative for us to strike out the negative things. And I always feel that if you are giving three sentences like that, you can say, sir, both are same. But look at the thing, they are not essentially same. That depends upon the kind of work you do, right? Now it's clear to everybody. Now it's clear to everybody.
Clear, sir. Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Rasmesh,
Yes, sir. Clear.
Rasmesh sir, Sanjay Malik, everybody. Clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clear. Okay. So remember one thing, remember. Let me tell you one thing. What is more important?